Hey, let's start the show.
For Friday, September 9th, 2022. Welcome to This Is Only a Test, the official podcast of Tested.com. Hello and welcome to the podcast this Friday morning, end of the week. I am Norm, and joining me this week, well, we were going to have more than one, but it's Kishore. Hey, Kishore.
I'm cosplaying again. It's
You're
great.
Cosplaying as the Bills Mafia.
Yeah, 100%. I will donate to a children's charity and then jump through a folding table. Let's go.
Goodness. Amazing.
There's too much going on this week. A few months ago, you rewind the clock, you listen to this podcast, we're like stretching to talk about stuff. Not this week. We're back to it.
It's not even Techtober yet. But it is the fall tech season. It is an crazy amount of pop culture and technology news. Unfortunately, we're going to have a guest, a very special guest, Jeremy. We had him lined up to join this week if the conditions were met, and they were not met. Apple did not announce a virtual reality or mixed reality or augmented reality headset. So until they do, we will not have Jeremy back on the pod post Apple event. But we're going to dive into everything Apple announced at their big fall keynote. But before we do that, we have to acknowledge, as we're recording this today, wow, the Queen passed away. It's an end of an incredible era. Don't have too much more to say about that. I just wanted to acknowledge that that's what the world, and certainly in the UK, things are going on right now.
Yeah, 7 decades at the helm. As an Indian man, I have complicated feelings about the Queen. But also as a Winnipeg Jets fan, which had a photo of Queen Elizabeth. By photo, I mean a portrait that was 30 feet high in their arena for around 25 years. I'm also quite a fan of the portraiture of Queen Elizabeth II. R.I.P. Long live the king?
It's so weird. I mean, here in the States, as someone who's just been in the States, raised here his whole life, in my relationship, my understanding of the royal family, the monarchy, everything is so distant, is through the lens of textbooks and documentaries and, to be honest, popular culture and popular cultural representations, from the show The Crown to the movie The Queen to all the iconography around that, just the royal palace, and everything we kind of read through, filtered through news and cable news and social media. So we are still feeling the rippling effects. I will share in the show notes a Twitter thread by Melissa Murray, who is a contributor at MSNBC. She's a law professor, and she wrote a very eloquent thread about her similarly complicated feelings about the passing of the Queen. But rolling right into that, we are 1 week after. Is con season over? Is that fair to say? It felt like it just barely begun. Are we through the big hump of it?
The blitz, according to where I live in con world, happened because we had 3 weeks where it was Emerald City, Silicon, then Dragon Con.
Yes.
I think D23 is this weekend, which isn't a con per se, but I think it still fits.
Yeah.
There's still a few more on the calendar for the rest of the year. To me, it just feels like we're back, baby. Like, con culture is back, con crud is back, con cosplay mashups are back. It's all here. So most of our friends that were at Silicon got right back on a plane, went to Atlanta. We're at Dragon Con. I'm sad that I was not there for so many reasons, but the cosplay of Dragon Con, which has always been a thing unto itself. It's not necessarily the best of the season, but it is the most innovative. It is the most creative. It is the most hilarious and strange and offbeat. And that was on point again. And there's so many cosplay galleries. I think we'll link to one maybe that Bill Duran put out of his favorite first of all, Bill and Britt, his wife, put together costumes from the video game Satisfactory that looked amazing.
Those helmets were so good.
Yeah, it had the kind of like oil slick kind of effect in the helmet that was so good. And for a year that we thought, okay, it's going to be Hellfire Club all over the con, it wasn't. There was so much like outrageously inventive stuff. I think my favorite has to be, I saw a Toonces the Cat cosplay. This is a obscure SNL skit from the late 80s where a cat drives a car and it drives it badly and goes off a cliff every now and again. And there was a cosplay of the cat in the car driving it off the cliff. It was the most bizarre, obscure thing, and I think it's quintessential Dragon Con. There's so much amazing stuff that came out. A lot of Moon Knight cosplays.
Oh, the Moon Knight with the Khonshu on stilts.
With the Khonshu was amazing. I saw some Totodile were out. There was some cosplay of the best movie of the last decade, and of course I'm speaking of Paddington 2, of the entire family from Paddington 2. There was a whole like Nick Cage troupe of like 12 people that were playing all Nick Cage characters from his filmography. On and on and on. It's just so creative, so amazing. And Allison Chase, who was on this podcast a month ago, took her Decayed Guardian and had it on display. And there's so much amazing. You can look on her Instagram or TikTok and see all these incredible Zelda cosplayers just hanging out at the Decayed Guardian. My favorite being there was a Korok that had set out apples, and you had to place one of the apples in the right spot, and then it would like jump out and give you a prize.
Oh, they're missing your cheeseburgers at 1 a.m. in the morning, 2 a.m. in the morning, Kishore.
There is
the mayor need
more than one Facebook post saying, "Where was my cheeseburger at 1 a.m.?" And I am here to tell you it will return with a vengeance next year.
Send us pictures too of your favorite Dragon Con costumes that you saw. There's always like the really deep cuts for the cosplayers that they appreciate. I saw, I think some folks that were cosplaying as Smooth On bottles, part A and part B, yellow and gold, separated. And then I think there's also oftentimes costumes that break through to more mainstream pop culture and get shared around for people who aren't in the cosplay community. And the one I saw this year was, of course, from Superman 2. You had Zod, Ursa, and Nan in the Phantom Zone. That was so brilliant. Yeah.
Unbelievable how good that was. That really sort of broke through and was probably the most viral costume of the year. One other that I want to shout out, if you're on our Discord, Matt G has been documenting the build of his Theodred costume for months now, and you could see it. He posted a number of pictures in the finished project showcase channel where you can see it on display at Dragon Con. It was just awesome to watch like the progress week over many months for it to come to fruition. So congrats, Matt, on that.
That's great. And then from Dragon Con to a world of, well, I guess there are dragons in this world. The world of Tolkien. We had the premiere of Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power, a 2-episode debut out of 8 this season, burning a quarter of the episodes on the first drop. Amazon's highly anticipated, long-awaited, and heavily spent, heavily budgeted Lord of the Rings show. And I think it was Hollywood Reporter, or one of the entertainment outlets called it. We've been in the age of a golden age of television. We're now in the age of blockbuster television. Blockbuster shows with House of the Dragon and now Rings of Power, just putting so much money on the screen. I've seen the first 2 episodes. Kishore, you've seen only the first episode. Is that right?
I'm only seen the first one because we're trying to space it out. What did you think? How about you start on this one?
My familiarity with that world comes primarily from the movies, from Lord of the Rings, from The Hobbit. I did read The Hobbit, never read through Lord of the Rings, and never read the appendices. I was more into science fiction than I was into the fantasy, but enjoyed the spit out of those movies, and for someone who just enjoyed those movies, even though not the same production company, not the same production, but they did say going into it, it would carry on the spirit of those films. So there would be some kind of aesthetic cohesion, even the music. It has, it's not using the same score, but they were acknowledging the past, the 21 years ago Lord of the Rings series, in the making of this, a whole different age, right? This is the second age of Middle Earth. And you have familiar names. It starts off with a monologue from Galadriel, and I really love how slow it is. I love how it looks. It is, the money is on the screen. The fact I look at that show and I think about like Obi-Wan, which is maybe the pinnacle of what Disney's has done with The Volume, for example, and you can tell a difference when it's on location. It's a very different show and different types of environments. It's not desert here; it's lush mountains. But like the fact that they shot in New Zealand really shows, and I love seeing that landscape. And last week when we had Mike on, when I was wondering, would this have the feel of television or have the feel of cinema? This felt like cinema, down to the aspect ratio. It's not 16:9 like the HBO Max shows are. This feels like it would be right to put on a projector or watch on the big screen.
Yeah, I mostly liked it. I'm only one episode in, so how do you pass judgment? It's way too early. But I thought it was mostly fine. I thought the story was uneven and slow at points, but it, like you said, it looks like $1 billion, which is how much they're spending. So
it's $465 million amortized over 5 years for the building of the sets and blah 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 blah. One of the things I will say though is I did read that for season 2, which they're going to start production on relatively soon, they moved it all to the UK for convenience and logistics, and for Amazon building a production hub over there, which really kind of disappointing. And I'm sure there are obviously beautiful landscapes and environments in the UK for filming, Cornwall and the like, south of England. But there's just not only is the New Zealand film community, but there is a feel to that landscape that I will miss. And hopefully it won't be noticeable on screen, but intellectually I'll know it and it won't be the same. But I'm looking forward to the rest of the season. I'm happy for it to be slow. We kind of know where it's going to go, but they've also taken some liberties and there's enough mystery, I think, even as I've heard from people who are very familiar with the text, that they won't know exactly what's going to happen.
Well, the title is kind of a spoiler about what this series is going to be about.
Right. But you don't know who Sauron is.
100%. So not to delve too much into the bad faith arguments that exist out there, but like, I kind of think Galadriel's been great in this show so far. I thought the acting of it is great. And the whole point of the elves in Tolkien's world is that they're arrogant and aloof.
Oh gosh, they got the smarmiest elves.
Yeah, and they're like, what if we just smarm it up to 11? And then you need an elf to rebel against that for it to work. And I thought all of that was just on screen in the first episode. Like, I need more on the Harfoots, and I haven't there isn't enough sort of around those characters to really fall in love with them. Elrond I need to warm up to. I think there's a long way for that character to go. But all in all, like as a opening salvo, I'm like, this seems not bad. Like, I think they're going to have to do some work to develop out the humans that are part of the show. I think they probably have the longest path ahead.
Yeah.
But all in all, like, great start.
Yeah. And how do you have humans that don't feel like afterthoughts? Because even Aragorn was a specific race of human, and I know they will go to the origins of those people. But yeah, the humans here, they feel like the fodder a little bit. Mm-hmm. The characterizations of Galadriel and Elrond, because those are the named characters that we see in Lord of the Rings. They're very different, younger versions, right? Brash and this is supposed to be the journey of how over the 5 seasons, how through the age they become those characters that we saw portrayed by Hugo Weaving and Cate Blanchett in Lord of the Rings. And I think a measuring stick of whether this show is successful will be whether the writing and the portrayal feels convincing, that they become not just suddenly those characters at the end, but it is a reasonable and logical progression. Yeah, very excited for it. That's on Fridays. Fridays is now occupied by Lord of the Rings of Power in this household. Before we jump onto some more pop culture news, I want to talk about some things on the site, on the channel, and some updates from our world. One, we had one of our biggest one-day builds released this past week, which was the long-awaited Adam lightsaber build. He machines a lightsaber hilt, a saber hilt, we'll call it.
Why don't we just call it a lathe saber at this
lathe,
point?
nice, love it. Lathe saber hilt of his dreams, and it's a feature-length video. It's a almost 90-minute one-day build. Josh from our team did an amazing job with the editing. Adam took particular care in filming it, and we get lots of great. If you like machining, if you want to see how you can turn a rod of aluminum into a beautiful hilt that encases an incredibly functional saber core, then it's not a tutorial, but it is a journey for sure.
Yeah, I will say for those that are long running fans of one day builds, this hits all the notes of it. It like starting with the raw material enthusiasm, mistakes were made, correcting those mistakes.
I was talking to Josh, and we're like, yeah, we see the comments, we're reading the comments, and there are people who read, and they know like the pace and the cadence of these builds occasionally, and they'll be like, the build seems finished, but I'm only 2/3 the way through. When's the mistake coming up, and when's the recovery? He was telling me how like some YouTubers, who like do sports casting matches or something, to avoid spoiling, they'll add dummy time or repeat the video at the end, so there's mystery as to when it actually concludes. But I mean, kudos to the fans who can spot that, and definitely lots of fun moments and moments that we didn't include in, because there are more mistakes than what you see, but you saw the best stuff.
Yeah, this is a mild spoiler, but I will say the thing that caught me by surprise is I was looking at the hilt. I'm like, oh, that's pretty finished. And then when he adds the kyber crystal to it, I did not see that coming. And I thought that was how he added it in is absolutely not my aesthetic. I was like, I would never hold that lightsaber. No way. But it's really cool what he does with it, and he does a resin cast of the kyber crystal, which is really interesting to see. We typically don't see Adam work with resin as much.
It speaks to how invested he was in this build as a personal project and how eager he was to do it. So it was one of those, we would get the footage and we thought it was wrapped, and it's a false outro, and there's an extra day of footage waiting for us to go through, because he has added more and more to it.
One last thing before we go on, can you shout out who made the internals?
Yes, absolutely. So it's called a Pixelcore. It's actually a new product that we got access to from the folks at Saber Bay. So it's SABERBAY.com. This is Justin and Shane were the proprietors who got us access. And you can get incredible. It has electronics. It's like self-contained, 1-inch diameter, so you can 3D print something that this can fit in. Single button operation, although there's also a version with a two depression button press for extra functionality. Comes with the speakers, incredibly bright NeoPixel lights. All you gotta do is buy a NeoPixel blade that they also sell, like a 100-inch blade as well, a 100 light blade. Not 100-inch, but 100 light blade, and it's like relatively reasonably priced. If you're in the market for a very modern, high-tech, customizable, runs on Arduino Saber core, it's called the Pixelcore, and around $200 on SaberBay.com. I think they're still in the getting it ready to release, so you sign up for their mailing lists and you'll be first and notified. But I think a lot of people are very interested. And again, the Saber technology, like the fan tech, is incredible. It's just like people are creating profiles. There are all sorts of crazy gestures, battle modes. Like there are things like very situational aware, gesture controls to flip things on. There's a lot of fun role play you can do to even cue up music, so you can have your favorite, battle song play as you do a sequence of button presses. Great for kind of role playing. Yeah. Moving on, also, not a video you'll see this week or next, but coming out soon. What we actually did before we recorded today, I was down at our friends, revisiting our friends at the factory of light and oxygen, Carbon 3D. I guess it's called Carbon now. Carbon, the 3D printing company. And I was talking to some of the folks there. If you haven't seen this video, we shot a video back in 2016. Is that right, Kishore?
Oh my God, it was 6 years ago.
Yeah, is that crazy?
Because they were one of the first companies that were doing resin printing at scale.
At scale, right? A completely different business model, right? Like they went for, as opposed to selling printers to hobbyists or professionals like effects companies, they went to B2B, right? Directly to build a company and a business to do printing for manufacturing for BMW and all their partners in actual production parts. They are printing things not to be molded and cast. They're printing things to be used in real world products, including just launched this month, the Adidas shoe, the 40 Forward shoe. Yeah.
And that shoe is so futuristic looking because it has this kind of like lattice structure as the sole, and the sole is what's printed, not the entire body of the shoe, right?
Right. Yeah. Yep. It's bound to the midsole, right underneath where the foot sits. But you'll see it in the video. We went through the technology and then the new printers, and Adam had a great conversation with engineers about the material science. And a takeaway for me, because like I also was like taken aback by remembering how long ago, what a different world, not just my understanding of resin-based printing, but resin printing as an accessible technology is today. It wasn't really accessible back then, but the world of 3D printing has changed, right? I think 2016 was right before like the trough of disillusionment, I think, for 3D printing. We're like riding that early 2013, 2014 wave of everyone thinking there'd be a 3D printer in all our houses. And then there were too many 3D printers, and the software, the slicers weren't quite there. And the print quality wasn't perfectly what people wanted for the right, there wasn't killer app. But in the past 2.5 years now, we've had this explosion of home resin printing and an incredible community of people doing design work and experimenting and new like innovations in that space for the home resin printing world. And one thing that we haven't seen a lot of in that space is experiments in the types of resins. And that's where I came to realize with Carbon, one of the things that they truly excel at is the material science and the custom formulations of resin that they do for their partners.
Yeah. So one of their founders was one of the most famous chemists in the world at the time when he co-founded the company. But we'll put that aside. One thing that strikes me is now that we're in this world with the supply chain shock that has happened, and there's going to be a move towards manufacturing closer to home to alleviate some of that going forward. I really wonder about how much this is going to scale, especially with just the sheer amount of manufacturing interest that's going to grow over the next 5 to 10 years, especially with like the growth of new electric vehicle plants. Like there is going to be some spaces for this kind of technology to take root at scale in a different way.
I'll give you 2 anecdotes that may or may not be in the final video that blew my mind about resin 3D printing. I think that, I don't know if they're the only people doing it, but they're certainly the first people that I've heard of doing this. And one is anyone who's used a resin printer, you print it, and then there's a post-process cleanup, right? Like the one thing that's the big, like the troublesome thing. In the butt. Oh yeah, right. You got to get a lot of either IPA or some formulation of a cleaner to get rid of the resins, and you're even after you clean the part, you're left with a bucket or some type of toxic reservoir that you have to then filter out and clean and properly dispose of. At least you're supposed to. And at Carbon, what they do is they don't use IPA to clean the parts. They take the print off of the printer and this big build plate. So they have this massive build platform from their their new large format printer, and they put it in a centrifuge, a spinner, basically an industrial spinner that they found. It's the same type of base. Think of like a big like a dryer, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's used in produce processing for cleaning, like
Nice.
cleaning salads, right? For like washing. And when you go to supermarket and you buy like salad, like
Triple wash lettuce.
triple wash
Yeah.
salads. What does triple wash salads mean? Well, they have these giant machines that literally push water in and spin the lettuce, and reclaim the water, and it's that essentially the same machine that has been now repurposed. They bought new ones, of course, but they found a new use for it, is to hold 3D printed build plates so that they can spin them at a couple hundred RPM, and the resin comes off of the part and then can be reclaimed. And after a couple minutes, we saw a demo. After a couple minutes in the spinner, they'll take the build plate out, and it's basically clean and ready for a curing pass.
I wonder if we should just DIY that, because it's really easy. I mean, we're talking about a salad spinner level of like couple hundred RPMs. Is not like that's not like huge technology to do that. Like you could do that with a miniature and try to recover it. I just wouldn't use it for salad afterwards. But outside of that,
I mean, it's also a big industrial thing that can hold like a very solid build plate, right? I'm not sure if it scales down. It might be like a perfect.
Oh, I bet you it does.
I mean, probably, but you have to have the right size build plates and mechanism to lock it in, so you're not going to get any rattle, right? So vibrations with that. The other thing that blew my mind is like we saw a printed midsole of a shoe. And it prints for efficiency. Speed is obviously an important thing, and oxygen and light, they print very fast. That's what got them very viral early on, was the speed of their prints. But the design of how they laid out the print. So one of the questions I was is it oriented in a certain way to optimize for the lattice or for print speeds? And they print right in the bed, no supports. So it wasn't like a room full of like nippers where people were clipping out supports or tearing away supports. It prints right on the bed, but it prints flat. And the midsole obviously isn't flat. So when it comes out of the spinner, they put it on a tray to bake it for a cure process. And it's a long cure. Heat is a big part of their equation, not just the UV cure, but also the heat to give it a different property, durability. But on that, basically the oven tray, that is a special formed oven tray, has a curvature to it. So that
it molds to it.
Molds to the form.
That's incredible.
Blew my mind.
Because like you have to be, because so much of using this technology for the sole is the strength of the lattice. And so that probably takes really careful engineering to ensure that the tensile strength is probably actually going to increase in the molded shape than what you started out with when it comes out of the printer. Oh, that's awesome. That's cool.
Again, I'm very looking forward to people watching the video, and it was fun to again go back 6 years later now and see how far the company's come and real products that they're putting out into the world with their partners. Yeah. Okay, that's what's going on in the world of Tested. Now we're going to move back into some pop culture news. Let's start with some DC. So we'll start with some bad news first. There is no DC fandom this year.
My reaction is, yes, I'm sad. It's also natural given the merger stuff that is happening. Also, that is the worst name for a fan showcase ever. So go back to the drawing board, come out of the fandom with a new name.
Yeah. And maybe they're waiting to do an in-person thing. I think they did find success in that type of live event as opposed to doing a Hall H thing. And they were at Hall H. Black Adam was the big thing they're pushing this year. But with the release schedules for some films pushed back and them still looking for their Kevin Feige equivalent, until they have that person, I think there probably will not be
clear the decks. they have so much like bad press out there with what's happening with the Flash and all sorts of other stuff. They need to clear the decks. Then you can have your con.
Yeah, yeah. But they did put out today a second trailer for Black Adam. Now, I watched this trailer without the sound on because I didn't want any story spoilers at this point. And what I saw was basically it felt like they were putting all the big effects shots in this trailer. It was like a montage of explosions and Black Adam action scenes.
Yeah, if you like lightning being shot and planes moving at high speed and The Rock making faces, this trailer is for you.
Yeah, yeah.
I I also watch it with the sound off. Look, it definitely looks like they are desperate for people to see this movie based on this trailer. And it might be good. Like all of it adds up. I still can't get over how good Pierce Brosnan looks as Dr. Fate. We got more Hawkman in this trailer. That costume looks incredible too. Just make a story that works. It'll be fine.
Hardcore DC fans are going to be really interested in the Justice Society, and it felt a lot like a Justice Society trailer as much as it was a Black Adam trailer. And my fear for this film is, aside from the name recognition of The Rock, Black Adam does not have a lot of name recognition.
No.
It's as if they launched Namor as a movie, right, on the Marvel side as opposed to Black Panther. So it's gonna have to be word of mouth. It's gonna have to be surprises if they manage to somehow surprise us with a cameo or two in here. They did throw Amanda Waller in the trailer as well, so some continuity in the DCEU, but DC outside the big three, it's hard to get that name recognition. But who knows? Aquaman, I could have said the same thing, but Aquaman, and that movie did made $1 billion pre-pandemic, of course. So they're hoping for an Aquaman level success with this one. Today, as we're recording this, also conflicting corporate holidays, pop culture corporate holidays. Did they not share the memo? The producers not share the memo? Is today Star Wars Day, or is it Disney Plus Day?
I think it's Star Trek Day.
Or sorry, Star Trek Day. Yes. Is it Star Trek Day or Disney Plus Day?
First of all, like naming a day after a streaming service, I'm never going to be on board for. Star Trek Day, especially with the passing of Nichelle Nichols, like, come on. Let's just let Star Trek have that moment. But the news is all on Disney's side.
Are you sure? I thought the news... Well, okay, let's talk about the news.
Okay.
Because on Disney Plus Day, they already had planned to do announcements or releases of big anticipated films. Like Thor: Love and Thunder is on Disney Plus today. The Robert Zemeckis Pinocchio film with Tom Hanks, that's pushed to Disney Plus today. In a different
Nightmare
world, probably,
Fuel. Oh my god!
Probably would have been a theatrical release, but maybe their confidence in it wasn't as strong. They have a special offer for new subscribers, so it's a big discount, sure, whatever. Through the 19th, it's $2 for a 1 month offer for new subscribers. But other than that, they announced a bunch of like behind the scenes specials. So an Obi-Wan behind the scenes special.
The news is coming Saturday, Norm. That's
but that's D23. That's not Disney Plus Day. Like this is, it's not. I don't think it's a real day. It's just like we dropped some stuff on Disney Plus. Here's some stuff that's coming out that we budgeted out of our Disney Plus budget. Enjoy. The big thing, I think, the biggest news probably isn't related to Disney Plus, but it's related to physical media. Is that WALL-E is the first Disney film to get a Criterion Collection release in a 4K Blu-ray.
Hands down, my favorite Pixar film. I think it is a classic of cinema, and I am glad to see it enshrined in that way, because the first, 17 minutes, 18 minutes of that film are perfect. And perfect cinema is such an homage to classic cinema, and it does so much character development and world building and emotion in that 18 minutes. I think it's the best 18 minutes Pixar ever produced.
And it's the first Disney film, which obviously Disney has put a strong grip on the where their films can be released and in what format, and this will be under a separate line. So this is the only CG film in the Criterion Collection. So that's pretty amazing. Hopefully opens a door for other Disney Criterion releases. But it is a 4K digital master, work with Andrew Stanton, Dolby Atmos soundtrack. It's 4K UHD, HDR10, and audio commentaries, all the stuff behind the scenes. It is the definitive physical edition. And Disney Plus hasn't given us reason to fear that content will be removed from, will be pulled from the service anytime. But which we have seen on other services like HBO Max. So there is still a strong fan base for physical DVDs and Blu-rays, and this one I would love to add to my collection. So WALL-E on Blu-ray coming later this year, November holiday, November 22nd, and pre-orders will be open October 18th. But as you alluded to, D23 this weekend, that's where all the announcements are going to happen. Saturday, what are we expecting?
Well, there was a lot of blanks that Kevin Feige left on the schedule after San Diego Comic-Con. So I imagine we're going to see a lot of TV shows filled in. So like Armor Wars wasn't there. There's probably going to be something like that. But this is Fantastic Four Con. And I think we're going to get casting of at least Reed Richards and Sue Storm, if not all four. Knock on wood. I think it's time we meet Doom, and I think I think that is going to be the thing that blows the roof off. And I think it's got to be, and there's going to be some big name for Dr. Doom.
Okay, now you say this not with any inside info. You say this based on the trend on what people are surmising and rumor mongering on Reddit or social media. And I got to rant because like this is one thing that bugs me so much, and it's the Twitter trends, Fantastic Four casting. And I'm so glad once we get past this Saturday that I won't have to see Fantastic Four with John Krasinski or Emily Blunt trending on, or Michael B. Jordan or whatever trending on Twitter again, and look at that and say, okay, it's another casting rumor. The latest one, I think Jodie Comer was rumored to be Sue Storm. I think she'd be great. My issue with these casting rumors is they self-propagate. And no matter how deep you look down the thread that Twitter pulls, and this is a fundamental problem with how Twitter tracks trending topics. Like you see trending topics all the time where they're trending because people are asking, why is this topic trending? And then it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. You can never get down to the source of a Fantastic Four rumor. Like if you dive deep enough, it's going to be some random fan blog wish list. There's never, it's just like someone just, it's purely fan driven.
I think you just spent like a couple minutes describing all the problems that we've had with Twitter for 12 years.
Sure.
Yeah,
But
so
it narrowed to this one thing that just happens because of my interest to pop up in my Discover tab or whatever it's called these days. And it just clutters up the trending topics. I want to know what's happening in the world. I want to hear about real rumors with real reports, with real sources, not just the endless fan speculation that self-propagates.
Okay, I'm only responsible for like 1% to 2% of that fan speculation. So, but I will say it would make sense for them to announce the Fantastic Four cast this weekend.
Yeah.
Just they kind of set forth. I really want to see Jonathan Majors. I felt like his presence was missing from Comic-Con. They really made a big deal about how Kang is essentially our big bad for a long while running, with Quantum Mania coming up and him being the featured villain there as a starting point. Let's get him up there. He is incredible. Like I'm still like chilled from that last episode of Loki and his performance in it. That's who I really want to see.
Yeah, it's a good chance. I think he'll be there, and we might even get a director too. I think it's only been rumored that
Mhm.
it's Max Shackman, who is the one of the directors on WandaVision, the lead director on WandaVision, that will be taking the reins of. Although, if they come in and say it's Steven Spielberg, I would be okay with that too. I would be so down for a Spielberg directed Fantastic Four.
Let's say I think we can rule out Martin Scorsese
Yes.
and Jim Cameron,
Yeah.
but I think Spielberg's a close third there.
Wouldn't that be something, though? Wouldn't that be something? Long shots, long Vegas odds. Okay, Star Trek Day. So a couple things were announced for Star Trek Day. We had more teases about Strange New World Season 2, new cast members, a photo from the bridge. You had a walking tour of the Star Trek Discovery set, some new Lower Decks previews. But the one thing that matters most is Picard Season 3, the first full trailer, a little bit of plot. The returning cast members from the first 2 seasons of Picard, Raffi and Seven of Nine. And you finally see why Seven of Nine was wearing that Starfleet uniform in the first teaser, as well as a new ship. Well, a ship that we haven't seen in live action really before. It's the USS Titan.
I know the trailer looked good. We got a premiere date too of February 16th, 2023. So, it's still 6 months away. Yeah, it's time to wrap up this story. Is how I feel about it right now. I think this was a good teaser trailer, but I also feel a little burned by the last couple seasons. So I'm not going to be, I think, full-throated enthusiasm.
My fear for the show will be that they're going to take their sweet time collecting the members of the Next Generation cast.
6 episodes, 6 members.
Right. Right. Yeah. Just get them all together in the first episode and let them go on an adventure. Mm-hmm. Let them just play poker for 6 episodes. I'd watch that. That's fine. But it's going to be, it's going to have a plot. It's going to be narratively driven. It's going to have some urgency, some stakes, right? So there are going to be moments of it where I'm just going to be like, just get them in rooms talking. Just have some fan service. That's really what I want. These guys don't need to be running around the galaxy.
I do think from the trailer, it does make it seem like the cast, or at least most of the cast, at least Riker and Picard, are spending more than like a chance encounter together.
Yeah. So that's Star Trek Day. And is that it? I think those are the big things from Star Trek Day. Is that right? Yeah. Mm-hmm. So fall tech season begins. The first big event was this past week's Apple September fall keynote, the launch of iPhones, a new Apple Watch series, as well as new AirPod Pros. What do you want to talk about first?
I guess we should talk about the phone first, because I think in a lot of ways, it was the least remarkable announcement. There's a couple features that were interesting. So first of all, 14 Pro.
So I gotta figure out no mini this year. They got rid of the mini, right? So it's just between the standard 14 and the 14 Pros, of which there are 2 sizes for each. The 14 has a 14 and 14 Plus, and as tradition now, we kind of know what to expect. Is basically last year's processor, the A15, put into the more budget-friendly phone. It has OLED screen now. It's basically last year's phone in a less fancy packaging, and still 2 cameras instead of 3 cameras. But it's basically it's a great phone, a sweet spot for a lot of people to buy. The Pros are where they kind of cram in all the new features.
Yeah.
And this year, the biggest feature, I can't. Is it the camera or is it Dynamic Island?
Before we go to Dynamic Island, where no one wants to stay. I think we gotta start with Island, okay. on the video. The video stabilization struck me as the most useful feature that they debuted. I think they showed some pretty in typical Apple fashion, pretty striking images of being in like a buggy and it moving around, or like skating down the street and like taking very shaky video. And instead of it just being image stabilized, it looks cinematic in how much it's stabilized. And I think there's an open question here. Are they basically taking 4K raw video and cropping in to do the stabilization, which would make a ton of sense? That's a lot of processing power you would need to do that on the fly. But this phone probably has a lot of that capability. It's probably not going to be the fastest thing to generate that stabilized video, but you're more than willing to wait a few minutes for it to process that in the background.
I mean, anyone who's used a smartphone these days knows that the focal length of the photos versus a video is typically cropped in. Maybe it's using less of the sensor, or they're processing it differently for motion stabilization. And here I think it's the same thing. There's using the extra pixels around where the sensor that normally would not fit into the scope of a 16:9 video, and then getting you software stabilization. Roll basically. So it doesn't look like the phone is kind of tilting side to side. And if that's something to be tested, if it looks as good as the demo, especially for like portrait video, people shooting TikToks, then it could be really good. Cinematic mode, which is what they launched last year, it takes a whole new, you have to buy a whole new year upgrade to get cinematic mode in 24 FPS and not 30 FPS and in 4K. So that's a very Apple way to unveil a feature. The camera, though, is now the best camera on it. The best sensor is a 48 megapixel sensor. It does pixel binning. So take 1/4 of that, essentially. Take 4 pixels, combine into 1 pixel with better low light or faster shutter, and you get a 12 megapixel image that looks better than last year's, hopefully significantly, is what they say.
So, subtle feature improvement is the front-facing camera has autofocus now. I think that's actually like a nice touch to throw in there. Again, that's one of those that actually is probably going to get used much more so than the full features of the 48 megapixel camera.
Yep. There's also, like Android phones have had for a while, always on display. So they'll go drop the refresh rate down to 1 hertz, just to have the screen on and show you, and it'll dim it, of course, but to give you notifications, and so that it pops on immediately.
I understand why people are interested in this. I've never been a fan of the always on mode. Yeah. I mean, I realize with it dropping the refresh rate that low, the battery consumption goes, to the floor. But I think they lose the messaging around well-being that they've been making the last few sessions with an always-on screen, because the phone's fighting for your attention in the always-on mode, even if it's not shipping as many notifications and whatnot in it.
Yep. And then the front on the Pro, the notch is now a pill, and this is the most Apple thing, where they took the limitations of of the physical design, which Android phones have tried to come up with novel solutions for, embrace. You've seen the pill-shaped notch, you've seen the circle notch on many phones, the hole punch, I guess some people call them, and because they need a space for the front-facing camera and they need the space for the Face ID, so you're going to have those two things, but now it wraps around them. But in a very much, and we could have seen this coming in the new, based on the designs of the new MacBooks with the notch as well, and how they kind of blended that in with the taskbar. Now it's an animated interactive space called Dynamic Island.
I don't like it here on Dynamic Island. It is
novel.
So maybe this is the third straight Apple event where they've talked about changing how notifications work. So at WWDC, we got the iOS 16, like the scrolling notification bar. This is another solution on top of that for notifications that's more dynamic. It feels to me that they recognize there is a problem with notifications on the phone and are throwing things at the wall to try to make it work. And yes, they came up with a ridiculous name for this. And yes, they are basically using a notch space to make it look, and animating around it to make it look like there's
It's
better
purposeful.
notifications.
To
It's
make it look
totally
purposeful, right? To make
Yeah.
it look like it was intentional by design. They're taking the bug and making it a feature on the hardware side. But the fact that they put in not only animations but shortcuts, in my mind, it's actually much akin to the touch bar on the old MacBooks that they got rid of, right? The animated touch bar, because they were going to put shortcuts there, ways for you to access voice recording and let apps tie into it, so that you'll get not only notifications but way to quickly interact with things while you're in an app. It'll be a top layer thing, because it's a space that normally would have been in a notch. It would have been a black bar anyway. They can use that negative space, the black space, while still animating around it. I think it's a neat idea. I mean, it'll be to be seen when it comes out, and it's coming out soon. Pre-orders are starting maybe already by the time you listen to this, 5 a.m. Friday morning, and they'll be shipping by the 16th, so in just 1 week. Oh, I'm not even going to be in town. Who's going to receive the package for me? Oh, goodness. I got to figure this out.
Wow. Real first world problems happening on this podcast this week. I think that does it for the phone, though. I mean, outside of that, there were some like minor things, but that's mostly it. I really wasn't blown away by the new phone lineup. There was some nice feature iteration. If I was 2 years out, if I had a 12, yeah, probably. But I'm not jumping at it. I have a 13. I don't feel the need to jump at the 14.
Yeah. Even for those people who have a 12, it's like, if you have the 10s, then that feels like the right time to jump. All right, Apple Watch Series 8, as well as a whole new high-end Apple Watch. Let's talk about the high-end Apple Watch, the Ultra. All right, massive screen, 49 millimeters.
I think that's too big, but okay.
How big is the current one? 36? Is it 440?
No, 44 is the largest one right now. So so that's a pretty big increase. 40 is like the base size. That's a big leap in size. It's not like, oh, I look down at my wrist, there's all this real estate on here that's not being used up. It is a big watch. You can't get away with that. Get away from that. And there's a reason it's a big watch.
It's more rugged, and it has an action button, an programmable action button on the other side, on the left side. But it's made for sports. It's made for people who previously would have been spending upwards of $1,000 on a high-end Garmin GPS watch.
Yeah, I couldn't have been rolling my eyes harder when I was initially watching this, but then I went into like some extreme athlete kind of subreddits, and they couldn't be more excited about this product. A, it's rugged. B, it has dual band GPS, which I have questions about from like a power consumption and connectivity standpoint. Like dual band GPS should just eat battery. Like it should just like munch it to death. So I'm very curious how they're doing the power management to achieve like the 36-hour life, 36-hour battery life. They're talking about 60 hours on low power mode. But they couldn't be more excited about the GPS features, and that it's super rugged, like titanium body, different straps for different like sports. I don't know if I buy into that one story as much, but they basically have made something for this high-end segment. And you kind of like turned me on to this. I was like, how high-end is there a high-end segment? And like, there is a real niche high-end segment here of people paying $1,000 for high-end watches with those GPS features.
Yeah. And titanium and the fit and the finish, also the flushness of it, right? It's flush, which has a design. Actually, it reminds me of like where we thought the Apple Watch were going to go based on where the iPhones have gone from. The iPhone 10s to now the more flush front, but to prevent impact, and it's a more guarded, a little bit of a guard on the side, on the right side for the wheel, and the previous shortcut button. $800. Is this price right?
I think it's for the market segment that they're trying to get, which is basically high enough that it is basically the equivalent to those super high end GPS watches that exist there, but low enough that people who will never use these features will still throw down $800 for this watch and never use anything except the action button. They're never going to be underwater or using the compass to navigate off the top of a mountain, or none of those features. So um, I think this is perfect for what they're trying to achieve. They're also kind of masterfully, in the most Apple way ever, subtly raising the base level price of the Apple Watch going forward by having a higher end watch in the product line.
Right. The average price it goes up because of that. And there's an SE as well, so an entry level. Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think a lot of people who just want to spend, who want to have the best thing possible and want to be noticed because people can see that they have the $800 watch, will spend $800 on this watch, and like you never go swimming or running necessarily with it, but they'll get a fancy watch band and they'll have the nicest Apple Watch at the party. Good for them.
One quick comment on the Series 8. So they've added a temperature sensor to this, which Samsung did with their watches earlier this summer too. They made a big deal about temperature sensing for ovulation and women's health. Typically, basal temperature sensing is you need to be within half a degree to actually be able to measure the rise in temperature associated to ovulation, and people have really different ranges based on that. And so Apple noted like a 0.1 degree sensitivity range. I want to see a lot more information on this before I'm convinced. Like, there is usually big kind of error bars on temperature sensing, especially when it's on a wrist area like this. So I'm not obviously being the science person, I always want to see like more data and stuff. I'm not fully convinced on that. But I also didn't see a lot of pushback online, but I don't think we should accept that that temperature sensor being as accurate as they claimed just on the surface.
All right. Good to know. And new AirPods, right? New AirPod Pros, sorry. So since 2019, last time they updated those, they're the noise canceling high-end AirPods at, how much are they? $250? Is that right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, $250. Longer battery life, 6 hours per charge, up to 30 hours if you use the charging case. Has the H2 chip. So not sure if they're trying to bypass Bluetooth. A lot of the rumors are that eventually they want to kind of use their own protocol and their own hardware to not have to use Bluetooth and be more secure, and also be faster, more responsive, less prone to disconnections. And there's capacitive controls for accessing all shortcuts and playback. The charger has Qi MagSafe as a compatibility for wireless charging. There's now a lanyard notch, so you don't have to buy a fancy silicone case with a lanyard notch, so you can put all your Tamagotchis on this. And it's going to probably be a big seller on the holidays.
Yeah, so I love my AirPods Pro. I think they're a great product. I wouldn't rush to buy this one until my current set basically die, because they've just sort of improved transparency mode, improved noise cancellation. I'd say like probably the most important feature is they added a speaker on the case so you can find the case easier. But these are all kind of incremental improvements. But this product was great to begin with.
Yeah. I'll also give a shout out, because don't necessarily buy new phones if you don't have to, or things like new AirPods. But the Swap Club, which we mentioned a couple months back, and this is the service that lets you, for a small, reasonable fee, send in your dirty old, maybe battery drained AirPods and get a refurbished pair that's been ultrasonically cleaned, plus had the battery updated, or a new battery installed, so you can have new life into a current gen AirPod that you might own. Well worth it. And the biggest thing with these the planned obsolescence for these devices is the battery. Batteries are consumables, and for devices small, I definitely notice on my old AirPods how little battery life I got from them after the first couple of years. So check it out.
Yeah.
Swap Club. I got a chance to try them out, and I really liked it.
All right, we saved the one most interesting feature and announcement from the Apple event till the end. Let us talk about emergency SOS, which we skipped over. I thought this was fascinating. I did not see this coming. The core idea is that if you are out of cell range, you can, with your iPhone, point it at the sky using guidance from on screen that will track a satellite position enough that you can send a message via satellite down to a relay station where there'll be some human interpretation, some sort of interpretation on the ground from that relay station that can send a message to emergency services if you need help. This concept and idea of being out of cell range and needing help is a totally relatable and functional item. And the fact that they're pushing towards satellite link capability kind of blew me away, because I never thought you would be able to point your phone at the sky and achieve a satellite hookup. So I'm going to pause there. I have some more details to share behind the scene, but what was your reaction to it?
I can see the ads already, right? It's just like the crash tech stuff that they touted so much, right? It's your phone. Why are you going to spend this much money? It could save your life.
So 100%. And if they can start to really leverage this technology to being a more reliable connection, we can start to think about a non-cell based iPhone. Like, we're nowhere near there. I'm not suggesting we're close to there. I'm just saying, like, that's what opens up from this technology in the future. So a couple notes. So a number of people in the astronomy community had been noting that they felt like Globalstar was going to be the satellite company that Apple was going to use. A number of people, including Scott Manley, unearthed some documents filed by Goldman Sachs that indicated that Globalstar has entered an agreement with a company to sell off 85% of its existing satellite network bandwidth for a purpose. This seems like what Apple did, is they struck a deal with Globalstar. Globalstar, I think, is rumored to be partnering. I think actually a press release went out with Rocket Lab and MDA. Rocket Lab's founded by this guy, Peter Beck, who's based in New Zealand. I think Adam and I met Peter Beck at a conference a couple of years ago. He had been doing sort of independent rocket launches. He is partnered with Globalstar to launch new satellites up with them in, I think it's 2024, it might be 2025, that are probably going to expand this network. And so it was really conspicuous to me that they said you get 2 years of free of this service for free. And I think they're going to be looking, like, I think it's actually, for once, it's really important to look at rocket schedules and see who is sending up satellites to extend capacity.
This is the thing. I think that they did the partnership so that they didn't have to give it away, that they are putting, they want to get satellites up there under the Apple banner, because now this is their singular partnership before they're going to go wide, right? This is the foot in the door. How many satellites? 24 satellites Globalstar has, and it's limited launch in the U.S. and Canada only. So this is just to say we are doing this. Don't be surprised. And now it's a race to get those private satellites up there so they can build a network.
Yeah. One last thing. Elon Musk on Twitter responded to somebody who said, like, did Apple try to hook up with Starlink on this? And he indicated that, they had productive conversations, but Apple decided to go a different direction. So I think that is still something that's out there in the ether. And then the last thing, I'm stealing this joke from The Verge, but I think it is so funny. I can't wait for the reviews of this phone because all these reviewers have to go into the middle of nowhere to test this feature, and it is going to be so goddamn funny. It is going to be hilarious, them trying to send an SOS message as part of a test, and how mad emergency services is going to be about this.
Oh my gosh. All right. Yeah, it's true. Yeah. I mean, and they've paid for the saturation of it for 2 years. T-Mobile has the partnership with Starlink for a similar SOS-based call. I'm not sure the fees of that or any extra fees or anything, but it's not cheap for now. But it's one of those things, could be ubiquitous in the future. All right, coming up, we have a bunch of other tech events, and that we'll be covering. Google announced they are going to have their Pixel launch event on October 6th. So just a short month away. Meta Connect is happening virtually this year again. RIP Oculus Connect, RIP in-person events. But that will be October 11th with basically it confirmed that whatever Project Cambria will end up being called, whether it's Quest Pro or anything, that will be formally announced. Now the question is functionality and release date and price for that.
Yeah. So I did a real life podcast with Jeremy this past weekend, otherwise known as Taking a Walk. And we were placing bets on price. So clearly this is going to be expensive.
Yes.
So do you think it makes it to $1,000 over?
Yes. Over.
You think over?
I think over.
I think when they said, I can't remember the verbiage, when they said this is going to be a premium product or whatever they said, in the 800 range, I think they were setting us up for $999.
Yeah. So I would be right post-tax.
No,
under.
No, that's not. No, I take the under. And
okay.
I think the under will be
Price is Right rules.
9.8. No, that's not. That's just rules. That you don't have to call that Price is Right.
Okay. All right, I'm gonna take the over. You can take the
I gotta
under.
think that's gonna be. Do you think they'll be ready for Christmas, or you think it's 2023?
Oh yeah. They showed this. They teased it a year ago. They've had a year to ramp up on this.
Having the supply ready for Christmas is different from having a few headsets ready.
Supply constraint is fine if this is not a consumer headset.
I guess so.
Right. This is about making a statement and getting and also getting the foot out the door, the foot in the door before Apple. And far out turns out to be not about VR AR. It's still further out. So that they have a month to figure out what they want to announce, show, release at Connect 2022. Yeah.
But what a red herring far out. There is nothing far or out about that.
Satellites are far out.
Satellite thing?
Satellites are far out, I guess.
Come on.
Yeah.
Not even a pun.
Didn't like it. Did not like the naming. There's toying with us at this point. All right. One last thing I'll mention. Stay tuned on the channel. We have some cool behind the scenes of the post-production of Thor: Love and Thunder in the audio world. We visited Skywalker Sound, which I think, we can say that. So check out that video coming out early next week. A couple videos, actually. And of course, you can always find us on YouTube's Kishore. Good to see you. We might have a guest next week to talk about D23. Oh,
yeah, that'll be good. Send us your cosplay pictures from this last stuff, and if you're building anything for any cons coming up before the end of the year, hit us up. I love seeing those build pictures, and let us know what you think about like the SOS technology. I thought it was a banger, but I'm not. I might be off base.
I can't imagine anyone I know using. I mean, it's the kind of thing that you're going to be happy it's there when you need it. But yeah, it's
I think it's the first thing I have heard about on a phone that was different and interesting in a couple of years.
And it's going to be a challenge for them to get the word out for people who bought the phones to make sure they know about it.
Yeah.
Right? Like, they got to find a way on the screen to let you know when you have no reception and GPS is detected that you are somewhere for a long time that if you need help, you could potentially.
Yeah, I think that they'll be able to do that pretty easily, because if you actually need help, they'll be able to recognize that you don't have cell service and probably have
and you're trying to dial 911, right?
Yeah.
Like you're trying to dial 911 repeatedly on a no cell service. Yeah, they UX designers up the wazoo. Okay, that is it for this week. Kishore, good to see you. Have a wonderful weekend. Hey, get your boosters out there. They're now available.
Boosters available. Bivalent. We can talk about that, but we won't. Bill's Mafia. I see you. I love you. Here we go.
Congratulations. Go Josh Allen. All right. And we will see y'all next time. Here is an outro I think we'll play. Let's see it. Yes.
Hi there. I didn't see you.
Test it.
This is going to sound bad, right? Let's see. Oh my god! What is happening? Test it.